and privilege and pleasure to welcome Mel K, the host of the Mel K Show. I've been listening for quite a while. This is cutting edge stuff available in all platforms. I listen to it on Apple. Mel, thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, Mel, before we get into the issues, I would like to, if you don't mind, get a little background on you and how it is that you have become this powerhouse of a host. I mean, a patriot, like who's stepping out, and you're taking on the false flag of January 6th in a way that I've never seen. I mean, it's really
Thank you.
unbelievable.
Well,
So
for me, I started out like I told you off air. I grew up, my dad, a huge Rush Limbaugh fan, and I think subconsciously, even when I was a very little kid and didn't know what I was listening to, it kind of went into my brain and into my blood and made me a fighter for this country for what is right. I am a very astute student of history. I see history as a lesson for what we're dealing with now, and for me, I ended up. Going to NYU studying journalism. Then I switched to film and I used both and became a screenwriter that was basically I would go and dig into history really deep. And then I would turn that into fiction. And I was a historical drama screenwriter. So for me, it was always about finding the facts and especially facts and history that was not being taught or told. And putting together not just that, but also the finances behind it. And when you follow the money, over
mhm.
the years, I had written a screenplay about Eichmann in Jerusalem. I wrote a screenplay about Vietnam. I wrote a screenplay about the expatriates in Paris. And the one thing I knew was that the same money kept flowing around, and I would find the same characters. And it continued to this day. I've worked on a project about the JFK assassination and other things. And there's just so much. And there's a lot to be learned from our history all the way back to the founders. And that has been my focus. And then I was in Hollywood for 20 years and I saw a lot of things there that happened. A lot of people think this BLM and the Marxist revolution and all that is new. Well, frankly, it's not new. And it actually was fomented and came out of California and Hollywood, especially through the culture, pretty boldly in the 2000s and has just
Mhm.
bubbled up since then, and I've been following that, and that's I started speaking out about things I saw, and then it blew up, and we started to see it everywhere, and I've just been following that. And then when the lockdowns came, I was still working in TV. Everything was shut down, and on March 15th, 2020, basically the next day I started the Mel K Show, and that's I've been just connecting the dots between past and present, and where we are and how we can get to a better place.
You've done a great job of covering let's just say the events of the 2020 election, something that I've covered and that I've been kicked off YouTube for covering, as
Yeah,
I
me
think
too.
you have. But yet, I don't think they expected all of us, including President Trump,
Right.
to find these alternative media markets and build our programs on those. And still, we're out here and we're interconnecting and building an audience. Um, the events around that, preceding that, you had, as you say, this sudden emergence of this BLM Antifa, which is not new. I mean, Antifa goes back to Nazi Germany. It's not,
Yep.
it was just as bad as the street Nazis. And they basically affected what I would call a Kristallnacht on right after the George Floyd death, where they started to loot black businesses and burn black neighborhoods and kill black children around the country. And this, they, was setting the stage for their election. I don't want to I use that word quite loosely in this case, of 2020 and the installation of President Biden after the events
Yeah.
of January 6th. Now we have hundreds of men in prison and women being held in prison, being tortured, not even being charged. You've done a lot in terms of covering that, Mel. I've listened to you. It's a very powerful testimony. You've interviewed people on this topic. So I just want to touch on that. I mean,
Yeah.
where these, in some cases, some of these men were convicted of crimes and are serving decades long sentences, and they weren't even in Washington at that day. I'm thinking particularly about Enrico Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys. What's going on with that at this point?
Well, I think anyone that's fair and honest and looking at it directly, and it's kind of a litmus test for where we are and where people are in this nation right now is how they look at January 6th. I mean, there's been so much evidence, the newer evidence that has come out. Darren Beatty's followed the pipe bomber
Oh yeah.
nation.
Hmm.
This is a very, very interesting part of the story, because at
Yes.
any other time in history, if we had a bomber, say the Unabomber, they had a task force of hundreds of people. This was so important to find the bomber, because you would think that if there's a bomber, the bomber's not going to stop at just putting two bombs there, and then everything that's unfolded from that. We're at a place where it was like 100% some kind of inside job. But more than that, I think the January 6th committee and everything that happened after that kind of tells you what the story was. The story was, I believe, and there's many other people that believe this. Now, there was violence that day. It was obviously on both sides. There was all kinds of stuff. There was obviously many, many infiltrators. But what really I believe this was all about was the election, what happened at the election, the truth about the election, all of the election fraud, and you brought up Kristallnacht, and this was kind of the Reichstag side of it too, which is they
Yes.
wanted to make an example of, do not question this government, do not question what happened at the election, do not stand together in any kind of protest of this installed regime, or you will be crushed and you will be vilified. And a lot of this also had to do with setting up Donald Trump for a to never come back. Of course, that was not going to happen. So they've done everything else that they could, and it's a small group of people. I mean, people have to understand that though we have, we have Fannie Willis out there, we have Jack Smith, we have Letitia James, all of that. There really is a lawfare group that is above them, and they are the exact same people that were involved in Crossfire Hurricane, the same people involved in the phony Ukraine impeachment, and the other Weissman and Eisen and all these guys. And they are still running this Get Trump campaign above
Mm.
the DAs and the AGs. They're not the ones writing this. They call it novel legal theory, things that were never used before. This is really not about, it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. In fact, I believe that our country, left and right, Republican and Democrat, is fully captured by a globalist billionaire oligarchy. Many of them, the American wing of it, the Soros, the Omadar, the Arabella partners, there's so many more, Gates, others, that they are kind of post-America. America is not their what they want in the future, and by any means necessary. So they keep throwing out that we have a democracy when we have a constitutional republic. The reason we have a constitutional republic, if people don't know, it's because during the Federalist Papers times and the people that were arguing against the federal government and all of that, they looked at every form of government, our founders, from all the way back to biblical times to Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, all the way to the Roman Empire, to Athens, to Westphalia, to all of this stuff. And they realized that a democracy was the quickest way, a straight democracy was the quickest way to another monarchy or dictatorship. That would be 51% ruling over 49%. And the people that actually have been orchestrating everything, I believe, including January 6th, would prefer a one-party system in this country. And then that would then lead into, I believe they really work for, which are the people that fund them, which are aligned with the global governance concept that was created a long time ago with Rockefeller and the Crown and Kissinger and Brzezinski and all these people that believe that an elite educated class of oligarchs is a better plan for ruling the world than the nation state. So the stated goal is to get rid of the nation state. And in order to do that, you have to crush resistance. You have to make sure that there are no people willing to step up or stand up against authoritarian rule and what they've shown us. And I believe January 6th was really just that. It was an operation to make sure that the American people were so beat down and felt so demoralized and dehumanized that they would never stand up against the government as they walk us into Agenda 2030 and the end of the nation state known as the United States, which will never happen. But they tried. And so many people's lives were ruined. As you know, many of the people that did riot and loot, I was in New York City at the time. I saw it firsthand.
Hmm.
We were locked down and you could see it from the roof, and you'd look out and you'd see all these people, no masks, marching, Black Lives Mattered, right during COVID, and nothing happened to them. In fact, many of them I just saw yesterday, the Chaz people of Seattle, they all got a $10 million settlement. The people that were in Antifa and doing that, and it's happened all over the country in every city. So that just tells you it's not just about January 6th, it's also about the demoralization and the rules for me and not for thee, and really subjugating the people. And I believe all people. I don't think they give they care about the Democrats either. The people that are really running our country want the entire country to destroy itself. And they are helping to facilitate that. And January 6th was a big way of making people scared to stand up against the government.
It's a an informal conspiracy that goes way back. This
Yeah.
country was founded as a way to counter that conspiracy by basically acknowledging that sovereignty comes from God and not the state, and that the individual has a limited grant of sovereignty in this lifetime, and that they then basically elect governments to serve within the confines of a constitution. And we could trace it back. It's an interesting subject, but we know that it really did not grab the high ground in the United States in terms of our politics and culture. I don't know. Some people say around the Wilson administration. I think
Yeah,
that's true.
me too.
In the Anglo-American establishment of that was discussed by Professor Carol Quigley in The
Yes,
Tragedy and Hope, which I think documents that he was a whistleblower and he was part of that establishment. He was
exactly.
a mentor to Bill Clinton, but they gave birth to all of these secretive organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations and the Chatham House in London that implemented a policy of perpetual war for perpetual peace as a way to keep the entire world off balance. President Trump was the first politician to step in and go out against that.
Yeah.
He ended international wars. He began to withdraw from those. At the same time, he wasn't an isolationist. He crushed ISIS. He also got NATO to finally pay their dues, which successive administrations, both Democrat and Republican, had given lip service to that. And he brought about the Abraham Accords because he's a businessman and he was
Yep.
able to do the unthinkable with regard to Israel and the Arab states. That has all been tossed into the garbage now by a return to the internationalist perpetual war for perpetual peace by this new regime. They basically gave billions of dollars over to Iran, which is now using it to fund Hezbollah and the attack American bases in Syria and Iraq and the Houthis. And they gave $1 billion to UNRWA, which launched the Hamas invasion, where they slaughtered over 1,000 Israelis. So we have this return to instability, not to mention the invasion of Ukraine, which would never have happened under Trump. And now the surrender in Afghanistan, which was the worst military defeat probably in world history, with umpteen billions of dollars of materiel turned over to the communist Chinese, and the complete betrayal of our allies. So we have instability around the world now,
Yep.
and because of the sense that most Americans have that the election of 2020 was not kosher, even though most people are afraid to say it to pollsters because they're afraid their name might end up on the same FBI list that's put people in prison.
Yeah.
There is genuinely a move toward reelecting President Trump to a third term, and that includes increasing numbers of minorities are waking up. They're being red pilled, as we like to say. Younger people, women. I mean, there's a growing groundswell of support. But yet you have, as you say, these same players in place
Yep.
who first cooked up the crazy conspiracy theory that Putin had conspired with, or as they say, colluded with Trump to steal the 2016 election. They worked on that for 3 years. And then, of course, the perfect phone call impeachment, and finally the J6 event, which they thought would be the final nail in the coffin. And they even impeached Trump again while he was already out of office. These same people, and you mentioned some names there, Eisen,
Weissman. Weissman.
Weissman. I mean, these I follow them on Twitter, and I sometimes send them notes. I mean, that they are openly conspiring to use the criminal system, the criminal justice system, to further change laws and prosecute Trump and any of his supporters, including the nation's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, whom they sent to bankruptcy, and destroy other people, Steve Bannon, a lot of people who are speaking up, using that system to put them in jail and to twist things around. I mean, this recent crazy case brought by this weird woman making these accusations against Trump. She couldn't remember the year. The likelihood of that is extremely slim.
Yeah.
And yet she was given $80 million because Trump publicly
Denied it.
Yeah, and criticized her, his accuser. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how bad our system has become, and it was so corrupt the way the judge handled that and his collusion with the chief prosecutor, and it's really rotten. So I guess that given the fact that these people are still in place and this big money is still in place, as you say, that crooked billionaire from Hungary, we know who
Yeah.
I mean, and
Hansberg Weiss.
yeah,
Hansberg.
and
Yeah.
Omidar and all the rest of these
Yeah.
people, their money is pouring out of their pockets.
Yep.
What do you think is going to happen? I mean, God forbid. I mean, I'm afraid that they're going to decide on the Kennedy solution, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. I don't think that's going to be possible. And frankly, I think a lot of these cases are falling apart. What I have found is that the people you're talking about through the Brookings Institute, again, they were involved in Crossfire Hurricane and everything else. And also, they have two new groups, Just Security and another one, United States for Democracy. We have Norm Eisen writing, yet another big document about the crisis democracy faces in 2024. We have all these different
Mm,
characters from Newland's husband Kagan of formerly of NATO and the Center for New American Century, and we have all these different people writing op-eds about Trump will be a dictator, Trump will be all about revenge, all this stuff, and at the same time they are using tremendous they call them novel legal theories, which are not legal theories. They're twisting the law to make it fit to get Trump in any way possible. Frankly, I think that they've also what I do know is that they wrote a lot of the legal theories and ways to prosecute Trump, and then handed them down to these Soros-backed prosecutors and DAs that are now trying the cases. What we're finding is that these people have no moral or integrity of any kind, and so they are picking these prosecutors to go prosecute these cases that do not have the level of expertise. This is a lot of what I see is going on with foreign policy as well. That we don't have Kissingers and Brzezinskis anymore. While they dumbed down our children, they dumbed down their own. While they made the Poison Ivy League become a lowbrow club of Marxists, basically, and communists, they stopped teaching them strategy and critical thinking and Sun Tzu type war. So we don't have those people in power anymore that are strategic, that know how to do. They're not good risk players. And so
mm,
what we have right now, I think, is a time for people in the United States to realize two things. One is, the old meme of Trump being, they're not after me, they're after you, but I'm in the way. I really have changed it to, they're not after America, they're after the world, and America is in the way. And what is in the way are we, the people of America. Our Constitution and our Bill of Rights are standing in the path and in the way of the Great Reset or any of the global governance goals that they put out there. Obama signed on to Agenda 2030 in 2015 without
yeah,
telling the people of the United States exactly what that meant. Agenda 2030's end goal is to have no nation states. It goes back to, which I say is the biggest fraud pulled on all of us in the last 100 years, which is the United Nations, which was really started by Rockefeller and the Crown and Kissinger and Brzezinski on his left and right, Council of Foreign Relations and Trilateral Commission. The long game goal was to undermine America's sovereignty and to really turn this world into like a Hunger Games situation. And the global public-private partnership of the World Economic Forum, which is one and the same. People don't realize this. They have many agreements with the UN. They are the same thing. And what they are is they function as if they are the parent company of planet Earth. And they decide, and all the videos of Klaus Schwab, how he infiltrated in all his different groups, and then they spread them out all over the place. And I think what we're dealing with on a bigger picture is the disruption of the end goal of destroying America from within, and thus then kicking into this pattern, this whole thing that they laid out a long time ago, where we were just a cog in a globalist wheel. And honestly, I think that they're greatly underestimating the people of the United States. I think it's becoming very clear that we are a nation that is standing right up for the world. Our Second Amendment is a gift from God that was thought about because of what our founders faced. And I really believe that the American people are seeing through this. Every time that they do this to Trump, especially this woman, and I lived in Manhattan. Her story's implausible. It's not even possible what she's saying
of
happened
course,
at
it's crazy.
Bergdorf's. Yeah, but the truth is I had to leave New York City not that long ago. I hung in as long as I could, but I'll tell you, that Southern District of New York and the DC federal court, these are not these are operatives of this globalist oligarch regime. They
Yeah.
are not working for the people. And the good news is I believe the American people, regardless of skin color or preferences of any kind or religion, are all seeing for the first time at the same time exactly what we're dealing with, which is a totally captured government that cannot be reformed from within. It has to actually be we the people demanding it, state by state, county by county. People are getting involved. Yeah, the truth is that this is a long term game to them, and their end game, I believe, at this point with what they're doing is more about them justice coming for them. Because, like I said, the same people, when you trace back all of the Trump lawsuits, they're all written by the same people involved in Crossfire Hurricane.
Indeed.
So if you really look at that, you wonder, so they're willing to destroy, tear America apart. I guess they signed in blood that Agenda 2030, and then Kamala Harris and Biden in September of 2023 re-up that they are halfway to achieving the 17 global development goals. And in that meeting that they had, and then the paper that they put out, which is still on the White House website, if you read their commitment to the global goals and you go past the top and you start going down, you're going to see that they have 17 goals listed, and all of about probably $3 trillion worth of dollars all going into globalist funds, which is the World Health Organization is a global money laundering scheme, the climate change global money laundering scheme to centralize the money into this globalist oligarchy that believes that they are the parent company of the planet. And I just think the American people, one way or another, slowly but surely, are getting to a place where we're probably 15% left of center, 15% right of center, agree on almost everything. And at this point, we have to align. I am a Trump person. I will be voting for Trump. And I believe that he will be the nominee. I don't believe these cases will make it. A couple of them will fall apart. I believe that there's some evidence that has come out, Brady evidence for the Jack Smith documents case. Obviously, he didn't do an insurrection, so that's not going to go anywhere. The New York cases will be appealed. The Fani Willis case, obviously, she's more corrupt than he could ever be. So what we're dealing with is none of these cases, I don't think, will make it before the election. And honestly, I think these people are so evil and so self-centered. They believe that they are supra class. They are above all of us. I believe that they're more scared of themselves being prosecuted, because the truth of the matter is, during Crossfire Hurricane, that was treason and sedition committed by the Obama team and by all of these characters. And then they continued it, spying on Cash and Nunes, and then continuing to spy on Trump apparently the whole time, conspiring during the pandemic. I do think that these people are more worried about themselves and the 2024 election, as much as the stakes for the United States are between will we remain America and American citizens, or become a cog in a globalist wheel and be globalist citizens, is really what we're voting for. But bigger than that, these people are willing to do whatever they need to do to not go to jail themselves. And I really believe that they've overplayed their hand, and most people see that. And that's why I believe the Black community, you brought that up before, it's really important to understand. Black Lives Matter, first of all, was funded by the same globalist billionaire oligarchs. All of these uprisings are, just like the ceasefire now is funded by the same people as Black Lives Matter, as was the Women's March, as was the LGBTQ March, as will be the Demand Citizen March planned for March. So I just want to say, I think people see it. I think that they did not. Their current group of conspirators are not very smart. They also can't keep their mouths shut. They put out papers and documents to show how smart they are, just telling you what they're doing, and people see it. And like I said, Black Lives Matter, everything that came out of that, defund the police, no bail, no jail, a lot of the DEI, CRT, this is hurting the Black community the most, and the Black community knows it. And that's a big difference right now, is that as they persecute Donald Trump, the Black community is looking at this every single time and saying, look, we told you so. We told you that this is what's going on with the justice system, that this is what's happening here and there. We also have the legal immigrant community that is outraged by what's going on, especially if they came from communist nations and see exactly what's happening to this country. So it's my belief that in the next, they already have the apparatus set up. You know, Zuckerberg said the 20 states bans his Zuckerbucks, so he just rebranded as the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence. You know, and you
And
know,
he's going to probably he'll write another check for $420
oh, he already did.
million
Oh,
in
they
order
already
in
did
order
it.
to grease a few palms on the street, so they
Yeah,
can start to go to nursing homes and harvest ballots. And you
yeah,
have the electronic voting. I don't know if you're following this trial in
Sure.
Atlanta,
Yeah.
which originally was brought by Stacey Abrams. It's finally made it into a courtroom where the prosecutor showed that he could alter an electronic voting machine with a big pen. So,
Yeah.
I think that, as you say, Mel, people are beginning to wake up.
Yeah.
You very succinctly have illustrated the international order and what their agenda is
Yeah.
and their financial backers. I mean, you talk about the ceasefire movement. I'm in Boston, huge money being spent, billboards
Oh
on
yeah.
all the highways. Those things cost $10,000 a week. I mean, that's not cheap, and they're everywhere. So yeah, the money is there. They're going to try to pull some other intersectional agenda,
Yeah. They
probably
have a
several
plan.
of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I've gotten information.
one after the other,
Yeah.
and so you have, but yet people are seeing very strange developments in our culture and in our life right now. You've got, an open border, which they cannot explain. You have 4 million people rushing over the border, getting checks for $2,000 and being housed in these fancy hotels. Even our liberal governor here is, upset and trying to say something about it. You've got hamburger at McDonald's, $15.
I know.
A family of three, it costs $75 to go to McDonald's. I mean, working people are noticing that. You've
Yeah.
got 30% of young people now consider themselves to be non-binary. Where did that come from? Who ever heard of it 5 years ago? This was, an agenda that suddenly popped out of nowhere, but we know it didn't pop out of
Right.
nowhere. These things have been in the works for decades, and now it's all out in the open.
Yeah.
I just hope that people can see this clearly and take action because it's becoming more obvious every day.
Yeah, and I think people are, but what people really have to understand is they have to stop. They have to shut off MSNBC, CNN, even Fox News, but certainly Washington Post, New York Times, Politico, and don't forget they've gone into deals with Google. So now when you Google anything, the first 6 pages are just their chosen sources.
Yeah.
We are in an information war more than anything, a cognitive war. I actually on my show went through a document from NATO, which I believe to be the one world military. Not a, it is in no way what NATO was supposed to be. And don't forget Reagan and had made it a pact with Russia to dismantle it. But NATO put out a document about cognitive warfare, brain warfare, and really about turning people into weapons against each other. And that is what
Oh
they've
yeah.
done here. We've been in a color revolution. Of course, Eisen is one of the architects of many of them around the world, including here. And the truth of the matter is that until the people of the United States realize that their neighbor and the people that vote for the illusion of the other party, as you brought up tragedy and hope, there are not two parties. It is just for us to believe that we have an illusion of choice here, which we should and we can take back. But I really believe that we are at a place where everyone understands something is very wrong, and what is very wrong is us. It is not the government. It is we, the people, individually. People have to understand their individual liberty, their individual sovereignty, their desire and God-given right to auto-determine their future themselves and to choose their own path and their own course is in danger. The Agenda 2030, which is what I believe is on the ballot in 2024, and Donald Trump has said so himself. You brought up he started to dismantle that without people really realizing it wasn't just NATO. He pulled out of the very vile and toxic UNESCO, which is where a lot of this LGBTQ education and critical race theory, all that is coming from. He pulled this out of the World Health Organization. He was looking at the money in NATO. I think maybe to say if you can't pay it, then we're not going to be in this thing. I hope that he goes after and pulls out of the United Nations. It's the biggest fraud. We're the biggest funders. They're funding everything at the border. In fact, a woman that came through Obama's administration, Amy Pope, is running the immigration division for 5 years. The Biden administration put her up for that in the United Nations, working hand in hand with Mayorkas to give out billions of dollars to 200 NGOs. And I think the biggest issue here is that there are NGOs, think tanks, and lobbying firms. Lobbying should be totally illegal. It is legalized bribery for the so-called elite class working there in DC. That's got to be dismantled. No taxpayer dollars or grants should go to NGOs. If you want to have a non-government organization, you fund it yourself. And on top of that, a lot of these think tanks are they're funded by foreign money or these oligarch billionaires. And I think the big misconception is that these people are American. Larry Fink and his friends, he also not only runs BlackRock that owns most of the country basically, but Larry, he also is on the board of the World Economic Forum, one of the architects of the Great Reset. He is also on the board of the Council of Foreign Relations. And BlackRock is the only company, apparently, financial services firm that can freely work in CCP China. So you look at some of these different players, Gates, Soros, Omadar, Reid Hoffman, some of these different people that are aligned with the World Economic Forum. It's not hard to see that they are not for America. They are for the global governance. They are part of that global governance movement. It's hard to look at now, but I believe both Bushes, Clinton, Obama, and Biden all are for the global governance movement and
That's
the
true.
people below them. But the truth is, the American people are not. And we don't like bullies here. It's in our DNA to fight bullies. And whatever happened in 1776, everyone should take out their Declaration of Independence, read it right now, and analyze where we are, because we're in the exact same place. And I believe that's happening. I believe people are standing up from the inside and they're getting it one way or another. And by the time the election comes around, no matter what they do, they won't be able to steal it. That's what I think.
It has to be very overwhelming. All the people you just mentioned, all those former presidents, either were blackmailed or they got very rich
Yeah.
as a result of being in office. Whereas Trump, he was already rich.
Right.
He's already famous. He doesn't need anything. So he's able to go out and say, hey, I want to give something back to my country. I really think that that's the driving force. And that's why they fear him. And that's why they despise him. He's not owned by this amorphous, illuminated, internationalist, amoral establishment that has really is behind all of these agendas that people are waking up to. Uh,
Yep.
Mel K, what do we do with the people in our lives who are still normies, who still get their news from Lester Holt? They don't watch us. They're still like, vulnerable to you know, these hatched hoaxes that are going to mobilize people. There might be between now and November, there's probably going to be another George Floyd type thing. Maybe they might even do something worse, like have another pandemic, God forbid, or
Yep.
or a war, or even a nuclear event. I just think these are very, very perilous times between now and November.
Yep.
What can we say to those people in a way that doesn't shake their cage too much, and that puts into perspective the fact that they are well-meaning but ignorant, and introduce some of these realities to them.
Yeah, well, for me, I like to meet people where they are. I've been traveling all over the country. I speak a lot to small groups and large groups. And what I can tell you is that everywhere I've gone, wherever I go, I stay. Wherever I stay, I go to the front desk. I ask for what is the local hangout here. I don't want to go to the best restaurant. I want to go where the people that live here hang out regularly. And I go eat at the
Mm,
bar and I talk to as many people as possible. I will tell you, regardless of where people lie in their mind, in the illusion of a two-party system, most people are pretty honest that our country seems to be a disaster on many, many fronts. I try to figure out where people are and where I can meet them. And instead of telling them what's going on, I like to pose critical thinking questions that force them to think critically. Because one of the big parts of this whole NATO mind control cognitive warfare that we are in an information war. It is a serious military grade. If you look back at Michael Aquino's Mind Wars, fast forward 50 years of technology and honing it, I always say Goebbels and Hitler are looking up from hell thinking, wow, they're really, really good. So you got to knock people out of the mind war space where they no longer control what they think, which is what the
mhm.
goal was, right out of the NATO documents, right out of Mind Wars. It is, and there's documents in between by NASA and other about brain mind control. And
Sure.
I've had on people involved in that. And the truth is, you have to knock people out where they are and ask them critical thinking questions that affect them and wait for them to answer. And once they answer something, then you ask another one. I think the best thing to do is to find people what they're passionate about, what's bothering them. Because right now there's plenty of things, especially we're starting to see something that I'm getting a lot of information about is our school system is being inundated with people that are not only illiterate in English, but also have had no education whatsoever, and they're putting them into school at the age level of the grade. So there's a lot of parents out there that maybe
Uh,
didn't care about the agenda before, but now they see like the whole they're bringing down everyone, and they're putting these kids in there that shouldn't be in there, that are hurting their kids, especially if they have special needs. So there's that. Then there's all the other things that are happening overseas, which are terrible. You brought up the ceasefire now movement. All I would say is, who are they asking a ceasefire from? Because it's certainly not Israel that is running
No.
this. That is not
And
who's funding it.
and
So
by the
again,
way, I asked them when they say, well, we want a ceasefire now. My question to them is, well, what's going to happen if Hamas starts firing missiles again? There won't be any more ceasefire, will there? I
well, I
mean,
think it's even
you know,
bigger than that. The ceasefire now movement. I'm just curious who they're asking to have a ceasefire, because in
right.
my opinion, there's a lot more going on in Israel right now than the traditional. I do think that this is another part of the color revolution, another part of the
Yes,
manipulation. There's a bigger picture in Israel because of where the land is in Israel. That it connects directly to Ukraine, connects directly to Taiwan, connects directly to Yemen and everywhere else. I still believe that it's this billionaire globalist oligarchy that is hell bent on the Great Reset, that is really funding and financing and causing chaos worldwide. Because to them, they are at the bottom line. I think they're Aleister Crowley level Satanists that
indeed.
order out of chaos, and the more chaos they
That's
can
right.
control. But right now we're in a color revolution in America, and the best thing to do is to find the people that you think are on the other side and meet them where they are and get talking. Don't fear that. And another thing I'd like to say too, because I am a Trump person, but I have a lot of friends that I know are voting for RFK Jr. They support RFK Jr. Well,
Yes.
right now, the best thing
Hmm.
we can do is to forget about the presidential election and align with the RFK Jr. voters on election integrity, on fighting together, teaming up, stop attacking each other. So what? You want to vote for RFK? I want to vote for Trump. Well, let's at least make sure both our votes count. And I think that
That's
that's
right.
another place people can get started, is get involved there. And also a lot of these Zuckerberg groups, you can go to any of their websites, Democracy Alliance, this new excellent in elections group, and all of them. They have groups all over the country that claim to be bipartisan. The reason that they're allowed to have these groups is because they have to claim that they're bipartisan. So
That's
start
fine.
going to their meetings. If just start getting out there and be brave. Being brave is the best thing, and don't worry about what anyone says. Everyone right now is getting to a place where it's pretty clear that we're being run by a criminal organization that has no concern for the American people or our future. And honestly, Donald Trump's MAGA, Make America Great Again, was his economic plan. It had nothing to do with the people. It was economic. And most people can get on board with that. We really do need to reinvest in America. And the people that want to destroy us want to leave America out. So, there's many places to meet people. And I think it's best to just make people think for themselves and pop them out of this group think. And that's where you can actually make some headway. And again, I think the Black community, the legal immigrant community, white, Black, gay, straight, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, everyone is seeing right now something is very wrong. And they're starting to realize the enemy is not the other guy. The enemy is actually above us and can be taken down because it's small compared to 300 million people. We're talking about probably 10 to 15,000 that are involved in what I would call the billionaire globalist oligarchy and their minions. And that's not that many people if we just start to align together and forget the differences they're creating and actually look at the real enemy, because it's not your neighbor. It is actually a very definable group of people that are more worried about themselves going to prison than saving this nation.
Indeed. And they control a lot of the levers of communication. Like Karl Marx said, the means of production, the means of communication, and the means of distribution, which is the definition of socialism. And that's probably the greatest modern hoax in history. The idea that this socialist agenda is somehow going to be good for people. It's going to be good for
Right.
the little guy. No, it's going to create a central authority in the hands of these very same elitists.
Yep.
And it's just it's kind of scary to contemplate, but that is exactly what we're looking at. I think you brought up a great issue, Mel, and I've heard you do it on your podcast with regard to voter suppression, because that's what
Yep.
we have. Every fake vote that's cast suppresses a real vote, and that
Right.
includes Black people in the urban areas. Their votes are suppressed
Yep.
by machine created votes and votes that are imported from other states, like they were. I don't want to get into this, but in 2020, I mean, I've talked about this with many guests, as have you. It's a
Yep.
huge issue, and that you do accurately identify it as a satanic agenda. It is goes back to the illuminated secret societies, goes back to the Sabadians and the Frankists. Great subject to go
Yeah.
into, probably too much right now, but the point
Yeah, but
is
I want to say
that
something about what you're saying because this is really important. Because I've done a lot of, I thought the biggest thing I do, which I find is the easiest way to identify who the real enemy, who's really who's running the controlled demolition of America and why. And a lot of these corporations, they're multinational corporations. Their main money does not come from America consumers anymore. It comes from Chinese consumers and Indian consumers and other places. So they are post-America. A lot of the people that people look up to that are the oligarchy that are running the NGOs that are running the get out to vote, voter suppression groups, like, all these people. But I have to tell you, I honestly believe they don't think the people that I'm talking about, they're supra, they're above, they're senior executive service. They're the people that Trump wanted to put in Schedule F to be able to fire. They're the people that have been in place since the JFK murder and have covered up one crime after another by their friends and been blackmailed or whatever. And they are still in office and they stay there no matter who the president is. And we got to gut them. But the truth about all of this is that I have been looking into these many get out the vote groups, from Obama's group to Zuckerberg's group to all the ones, Open Society funds. They don't think anyone deserves a vote. When I tell you right now that they don't care about Democrat votes, Republican votes, Libertarian votes, independent votes, they don't believe that the American people should be allowed to vote. Okay, so
yeah,
go
no.
back to Rockefeller when he said that it's high time that a world government be determined, and also that the voting of the past to auto determination by the people should not be the case. It should be the bankers and the elite educated class should decide for the people who runs the countries. And that is what they believe. So when they have all these pushes for marginalized voters and get out the vote and everyone should vote, what it's really about is that nobody should vote. Everything that they say
Oh
is
yeah,
inverted
no. Well,
language.
and Rush Limbaugh in some of his last broadcasts said that the Democratic Party wants to abolish elections. They
Totally.
want to just it's just a formality. There's like there'll be like a public kind of coronation, and
Right.
people will have these phony arguments, but underneath there'll be really nothing going on. It's all an
Right.
algorithm that's set in advance to only give certain people this number of votes here and there, and switch them around with if somebody needs a few extra over there. I mean, we
Yeah.
could. This is a fascinating subject, one that needs to be exposed. And to do so is very difficult because these people don't suffer fools gladly. I mean, they want to, they'll suppress you in every way they can.
Oh, I know. Don't I know it?
Oh, sure, as do I. But Mel, I like your positive energy. You're on the good side, obviously. You're on the side of truth, of God, of
Yeah.
justice, and that everybody can make a contribution. As you say, you make your contribution with your incredible broadcast. I try to do it with mine.
Yeah.
Anybody can make a contribution
Right.
in some way toward, I know it's a word that we like to use, but I think it's a good one, red pilling America.
Yeah.
Having people essentially wake up and see what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
So Mel K, let my listeners and viewers know where they can listen to your excellent broadcast
Yeah.
and all of the other information you'd like to share.
Great. I want to say one thing about what you just said, because here's a great side of what we're dealing with right now, especially when I said that they're not after America, they're after the world and America's in the way. That should empower every American to dig inside and really look at what they want, their life and their legacy, and what they're going to say to their grandchildren or great grandchildren. And when somebody looks back and says, that guy, this, like, what did you do right now when tyranny and totalitarianism and freedom is being threatened in America? What did you do? And to me, I think this is a tremendous opportunity. And I keep saying, I don't care if you were a drunk, you were a cheat, you were a liar, you were a doctor, a nurse, a great person, a hero, a business CEO that hired thousands of people. Whatever your past was, right now in this time in history is going to be so crucial for not just America, but the world. You can redefine and be anything you want right now. There's plenty of opportunity to be a hero, to be a leader, to redefine your path, to choose a new future. This is a time of great rebirth for everything, including every single individual in the United States. Every citizen can redefine who and what they are and their purpose in life. So people should be excited and get really involved wherever they see fit. and find their gifts and find their skills. It could be anything from the arts to podcasting to everything you're saying to whatever it is. Everyone right now should see the opportunity of the tremendous period of time we are living through and seize it for themselves to recreate and to refocus their life wherever they see fit. It is a time of great change, and people should take advantage of that in the most positive ways. And you can follow me at themelkshow.com. I have a great resource page that anything I'm talking about, I put receipts on there, including lots of information about everything from the global government and Agenda 2030 to what's going on in our schools, to who's running and what their past votes are, to the WikiLeaks documents, FBI D-class. So the melkshow.com resource page is a great place to go to start your journey on picking what your purpose will be in this battle. And on top of that, the Mel K Show is everywhere except for I was kicked off of YouTube and I will never censor myself. So I decided to never go back. So I am on every night live at 7:30 on Rumble and on everywhere free speech lives. My audio podcast is all over the place as well. And other than that, I am on Instagram, the Mel K Show, and I got kicked off of Twitter, but I'm back on there because it is one of the fronts. Be brave, stand up, speak up. Don't care what people say about you. That's not going to matter. When people look back, they're going to know that you stood up for what was right when it was hard. And that's what matters the most. So themelkshow.com and Rumble, the Mel K Show, please subscribe there.
Excellent. Mel K, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
It's been really, really great. I really appreciate it, Mel.
Thank you. You too. And keep up the great work yourself. Really appreciate it.